Hello, this is David. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Today we will be doing apple cider vinegar. There's two ways to do this. You can either get a whole bunch of apples, cut them up, put them in a jar like this, and put water in with a starter, typically a mother, which is the cloudy part from another part of a apple cider vinegar. You can buy those at the store. Make sure you get the ones though that have usually in a glass jar and they've got the cloudy stuff on the bottom. A lot of times they say includes mother on the label. Don't get the stuff that's clear all the way through because that won't work. Or you can use a previous starter that you have. This is the mother I will be using today. Or you can use a few grapes. These are old grapes, but they still have the white residue on them, which is sort of hard to see in the camera. But they will. That's the yeast. A lot of fruits have yeast on them naturally. You can use like plums and stuff like that too. It just each yeast tastes a little different, but that's basically the gist of it. So what you will need is a cutting board, apples, a funnel. I'm going to use a strainer today because I want to get as much of that liquid in there with the least amount of apples. And then again, I'm going to use a few grapes to demonstrate both techniques, even though it's a little much. But and the technique I'm going to show you today is just starting with a few apples. These are some old apples that I have, and then I'm going to show you how to shave the apple cores. So if you're having an apple a day, you can just shave the cores and add it to it every single day, and then add water slowly. So I will cut up these apples, and then we will add them to the jar. So now that the apples are cut, I'm going to get rid of the cores and make sure there's no seeds or stems that get into the um, the jar here. I filled up the jar about halfway with water. It's hard to see. I have a funnel right here to make it easier to put the apples in so they don't fall all over. These are apples. One of the apples was pretty old, and so it's hard to see, but it's got rot on it or brown parts. I don't use those. I discard those. I'm and I don't know if you can use those. So I'm gonna put the apples into the mixture, and I'm gonna do this two different. And then what you do is you add the starter or the yeast. In this case, I'm going to add three grapes, which have the white yeast on them. I'm going to shake this around a little bit so that gets in there. Um, but I'm also going to demonstrate how to add the mother. The reason why I'm doing it both ways is not everybody has a mother to work with, or they're not going to go buy one. And sometimes grapes are easier to do. Basically, you're creating a wine, and that wine is then going to turn to vinegar. It's very similar to the concept if you buy a bottle of wine and then you leave it out and a day or two later it becomes vinegar. So I'm going to use this as my strainer. I don't have a fancy strainer because I want to get the liquids, which you can see on the bottom of this, as much of those liquids in here as possible before I add sort of the flesh that was left over from the prior mother. And then I am going to use about this much of the prior mother. Whoops, keep that in there. Maybe a little bit more. There we go. Well, that was more than I intended. That's okay. And so now this is ready to go. This has more in it than normal. So I'm going to just leave for about 30 days or so, and maybe longer because these have fresh apples, and it will turn into wine and then vinegar. So here's an apple core from my apple at lunch today, and so I'm going to cut the flesh, being careful not to get the seed or the stem or any of the seeds in it. As you can see, I've cut up as much of the apple as I needed to get what I wanted out of it. Actually, there's one little bit here. The stem and the seeds again are over here. I'm taking my one of my more recent cultures, and I'm just going to add it to here. All of this fleshy stuff, not the stem and the seeds. And it still smells like wine, so it needs some more fermenting. But at this point, I'm going to seal this one and let it sit for about a month. So these are three different stages. Um, you can see this is the most recent one where the apples are still on the top. There is some of the mother where it's fallen down after the cells have broken down and the sugars are in there. Here's one that is completely fermented. Um, I'll take the liquid off the top here, and then I will use part of this mother for to start the next one, for which I used earlier in the project, or earlier in the video. And this is the third one. It's been strained. I've been using it. Again, you can see that white film across the top. Um, suggest throwing that out if I were you, but I have drank. Okay. That's not to say that that is any sort of advice, but I just wanted to let you know. A couple things to think about. If for any reason the apple cider vinegar still smells like wine, let it sit longer before you use it. If there is any discolorations, mold, I would discard it and start fresh. I want to point out that my demonstration did not go as planned. So now I've got this mother, which is actually a perfect amount left over, so I can I'll add some water to it. I'll probably fill it up about halfway again, and then I'll add the scraps from the apple cores over the next couple weeks, probably the next 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll let that ferment for and sit in for another 30 days. So sometimes you have to be flexible. It doesn't always work how you want, and be aware of how much fruit you're putting in or mother versus how much water, because the goal would be to get most of this to be water and only a portion of it to be fruit. So thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to our next episode.